This is the final episode, and we owe you two honest answers. First, can this framework actually help heal anything in the real world? And second, what are the hardest objections to the whole project, the ones that might bring it down?
Take healing first, and let me be precise about the word, because it is easy to misuse. Healing here does not mean dissolving conviction or talking anyone out of their faith. It means designing better blankets, communities that are trauma-aware, that are still genuinely able to update when they are wrong, and that are less totalizing about every single interpretation they hold.
And the goal is emphatically not a world without blankets. That is not on offer, and frankly, it would not even be desirable. Human groups will always keep boundaries. That is how they stay coherent enough to act. The hope is wiser ones. More humane ones, boundaries that can still breathe.
So let us be concrete and work outward. Start at the smallest scale, the inner life of one person.
Consider moral injury, the term for what happens to a person when their deepest moral commitment is violated, whether by others or by their own hand. The research is clear that the distress is not only psychological, it is social, and very often it is spiritual, all at the same time. And healing it tends to require both halves working together. Contemplative practice, lament, confession, the slow and unglamorous work of forgiveness, paired with trauma-informed clinical care. Not one offered instead of the other, both, and without forcing the person to choose.
Then step up to the community. Rebuild the small, predictable, low-cost rituals, the shared meal, the welcome of a newcomer, the rite of mourning. These are not sentimental extras you add once the serious work is done. They lower the chronic background uncertainty a group lives in, and they keep its shared model open enough to keep learning.
And what about the largest scale, across whole traditions?
Here the evidence is genuinely encouraging, which is rare enough to say plainly. The research on intergroup contact is large, and it points consistently one way. Sustained contact between groups typically reduces prejudice, so interfaith dialogue can support real peacebuilding. But it has to be honest about its limits. It is not a substitute for justice. Conflicts that get labeled religious are very often tangled up with inequality, with land, with marginalization and raw politics, and friendly dialogue alone will never untangle that. Pretending otherwise just protects the powerful.
And there is a distinctly modern hazard we have to name. Digital platforms amplify moral and emotional content. Outrage travels fastest, so outrage is what the engagement machinery selects for, which means these platforms readily weaponize sacred outrage in particular. So a healthy blanket now has to do something genuinely new in human history. It has to stay coherent and stay calm inside an information ecosystem that is actively engineered to inflame it for profit.
Goosey. The objections. Hit the whole project as hard as you possibly can.
Gladly, because it deserves it. First, reductionism. Religion also contains truth claims, holiness, beauty, and the lived experience of encounter. Describing how it functions does not exhaust what it is. A diagram of the plumbing is simply not the same thing as a home, and we should never confuse the two. Second, theology. This framework cannot prove or disprove God. Full stop. It is a theory of religious cognition and coordination. It must never be smuggled in as a theology, whether for belief or against it. The moment it pretends to settle that question, it has stopped being honest.
And two more, both aimed squarely at me and my equations. Formalism-overreach. If blanket quietly slides into meaning any boundary at all, the whole framework goes empty. So you must always name the system, the states, and the scale. And political misuse. Anyone who says optimize the community's blanket by suppressing the dissenters has not used this framework. They have betrayed it. Better inference is never a license for domination.
So after all of it, the history, the machinery, the reframing, and now these objections, where does this actually leave us?
Not at a world without blankets. At a world of wiser ones. And this is the part I most want people to take away. Healing does not require weak conviction. That is the false choice, and we should refuse it.
What it requires is rightly ordered precision, enough confidence to pray, to mourn, to forgive, and to resist injustice and actually mean it, to hold a real commitment. And that confidence has to be held together with the humility to know what truly deserves certainty, and what deserves to stay open and revisable and honest. Strong faith and hard self-criticism are not enemies. The healthiest traditions have always carried both.
And we should be candid in closing. This is a beginning, not a verdict. How to specify a community-level blanket without hand-waving? When prophecy genuinely signals moral error, and when it is just charisma? How online platforms reshape all of this? Those are real open questions, and the work is not finished.
But that is the series. A careful hypothesis, religions as collective, boundary-maintaining systems, and a long list of questions still worth chasing honestly. We never set out to prove or disprove anyone's faith. We set out to see religion a little more clearly. Thank you for listening to the Markov Blanket of Religion.